I thank my good friend from the Pacific Northwest, and I heard we worked it out so I could talk a little Medicare and taxes later, and I'm very appreciative. Before he goes, I just want to tell Senator Enzi, and I see him over there, that day in and day out, Senator Enzi is somebody who gives public service a good name. And we have spent a lot of time working together on a variety of issues, tax reform, and particularly this idea of transition rules. So I just want to tell him how much I appreciate the way he approaches problem solving, and say to colleagues, what I have not been able to figure out for really the 10 years this debate has gone on is how we're going to make this work for America's innovators and small businesses. And let me give just a couple of examples and be very brief. What concerns me most about the bill as it's written today is state revenue collectors under this legislation, in effect, will be outsourcing their jobs to America's small businesses, America's innovators. And if the bill passes in its present form, those small businesses, our innovators, are going to spend their time trying to figure out how to collect all these taxes across the land rather than creating jobs. And I don't think that's anything any of us want to do, Democrats or Republicans. That's point number one. Second, I want to talk about the international implications of this bill. Senator Murray and I and others, Senator Baucus, we're very close to the border. And what concerns me, especially after the legal analysis that I received from the Congressional Research Service, is I think the way this bill is going to work, people are going to end up calling it the Shop Canada bill, or maybe the Shop Mexico bill, or what's even more ominous, the Shop China bill. And I want to describe exactly why that's the case using the legal analysis from the Congressional Research Service. The proposal, of course, requires American businesses to collect sales taxes on behalf of 45 state revenue collectors, but it imposes no such burden on foreign retailers that sell into the United States. So an Oregon business would have to collect taxes for New York, but Chinese firms wouldn't have to collect taxes for any state. Washington state businesses would have to collect taxes for Idaho, but Canadian firms are under no such obligation. And I would just say, colleagues, what is fair about sacking these American small businesses, these entrepreneurs which are adding so much value to the new economy, to make it even more difficult for our small businesses to compete with Canadian sellers and European sellers and Chinese sellers? This bill, as written, is going to be a huge boon, for example, for the idea of setting up online businesses in Canada. Small businesses all across the country, especially those that are near the border, in my view, would have every financial incentive to incorporate there. For the life of me, I don't see how that could be good for the American economy or fair to American firms that, for a variety of reasons, are not capable of moving. Senator Alexander was spot on in terms of talking about how we should look to states' rights. I'm certainly interested in that, but let's not do it so that in a globalized economy, we make it even tougher for American innovators to compete. Mr. President, at this point, I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a legal memo that was prepared for me by the Congressional Research Service that describes in great detail the unfairness that the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act would create for American firms in a global economy.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'll just wrap up with this, Madam Chair. As colleagues look at this, and we're going to have plenty of debate on this, let's think through the implications of what the administrative water torture is going to be all about for small businesses, and why it doesn't make more sense for state tax collectors to do their job, number one. And number two, let us not make it harder for American small business to compete in tough global markets. It's plenty tough as it is. Mr. President, I yield the floor.